Okay. All right. I'm Nathan Ellis, and I'm going to be talking about the use of artificial intelligence in space operations. So a little bit of overview. I'm going to discuss a little bit of background on the issue, some of the technical and ethical challenges, a little bit of the current and future usage that's already being implemented and planned to be implemented. Then we're going to discuss some of the negative and positive viewpoints, try to find some middle ground and figure out how to compromise. And then some alternative considerations. I'll share my personal opinion, and then we'll end with some overall conclusions on the issue. So a little bit of background of the ethical and technical challenges. For the ethical side, there so far is little to no regulation with the use of AI, especially on as big of a scale as would be necessary to use it in space operations. The capabilities of what we could possibly develop are unknown, especially with like pop culture AI. It's known a lot can go wrong really quickly. AI, if we give it the capability to, can progress and develop itself at a speed that we could not possibly keep up with. And that's something that can get out of hand very quickly. And in general, there is a lack of public support to fully dive in and go headfirst to progress AI to its fullest extent. Some of the technical side, like I said, the scale that is necessary for AI to be used autonomously in space operations would cost an insane amount of money to develop. It's largely untested in such a high capacity, and developing AI operated machines that can quickly adjust to the amount of unforeseen and unknown stimuli and situations that arise when operating in space. Um, it needs to be able to quickly adapt to those without being able to be like operated on. Because once we launch it, it's up there. We can't do anything to help it in a sense. So a little bit of the current usages that we already use AI in, we use it for navigation tools, such as like directing spacecraft, keeping it on course. We use it for data analysis, like analyzing samples taken from rovers, determining its composition, its date, such stuff like that. We use it in life support systems, keeping astronauts alive, whether on the International Space Station or just on any other spacecraft that they might be going up in. We use it here on Earth to run mission simulations to kind of detect possible outcomes and things that might go wrong when we move to launch the mission. And we also use it in manufacturing, using it to develop complex parts that are out of the box that humans would never think of, that have significantly lower stress factors than man-made parts. They're lighter and they can be developed and produced in a much quicker time than if we had a team of developers on it. So some of the future plans, we could move into fully automated travel, having spacecraft be operated by AI without the use of human pilots from start to finish, using them further for robotic exploration, for like continuing the use of rovers into increasingly intense environments to collect data, going places that humans could not, such as like planets or systems that have extremely high temperatures that we have not yet developed materials to insulate humans from. Using it for fault detection and predictive maintenance, such as like being able to detect system failure, diagnosing the issue without having to designate somebody to think and consider all the outcomes. And then predictive maintenance, like anticipating issues, the lifespan of parts, and being able to accurately predict when things are going to be needed to be replaced. Also using them for auto course adjustments, detecting debris and maneuvering the spacecraft to be able to stay on course, and just staying away from anything that might cause damage to the spacecraft and interrupt the mission. Continuing on that, this is a figure that demonstrates the overall market size for AI. It spans from 2020 to 2030. You can currently see we're in 2024 at $184 billion. And by 2030, it's projected to go over $800 billion. That's over a 4 times increase. It's also broken up into a bunch of different sections, with the biggest being machine learning. That in conjunction with AI robotics, which is the small blue portion at the top. Those are probably the two that most apply to its usage in space travel. But that significant increase significantly expands our opportunities to focus on it and use resources to develop further programs to help with the furthering of its use in space travel. So some of the positive viewpoints of implementing AI further into spacecraft: we can completely eliminate human casualties. If there are no people on the spacecraft, if something goes wrong, there's no risk of loss of life. Something like the Challenger disaster would not happen again. Our progress, given its ability to self-improve, its progress is entirely at its point of development and not limited by our human advancement. Improved data collection and mission success. AI-operated rovers are proven to have a higher success rate than those being remotely controlled by humans. They do not glance over things that could be of use, and they are much more accurate in finding what they're supposed to. We can remove the human error. I kind of touched on that just now. Improvement of manufacturing capabilities. Like I said, with the manufacturing of parts, they have significantly less stress factors. They're lighter, and the manufacturing process is overall much quicker. Sometimes the entire process from the development of the part to having it in factory and being able to put it on a spacecraft can be done in as little as 1 week. The predictive maintenance can solve problems before they arise. And as much as some people may like to resist it, AI is inevitably the future, especially in a field such like this. On the other hand, some negative viewpoints. Again, on the other side of the rapid intelligence expansion, AI has the ability to progress at a speed that we cannot keep up with, and that can quickly get out of hand. And if we're not closely monitoring it, it could develop to a point where it's no longer under our control. It's autonomous decision making. Again, without oversight, it could make decisions that, if we do have people on the spacecraft, it could put them at risk if the AI prioritizes the mission over something like their lives. A large amount of regulation and oversight is still necessary, regardless of how advanced it gets. There will always have to be a lot of legal sides and just overall oversight to make sure that everything is controlled. Kind of along with that, if we develop this AI and let it go on and it kind of takes the place of the experts in the field, it creates a form of dependence, and eventually the experts are going to be less knowledgeable in the field than they are now, because they don't have to rely solely on their knowledge and the knowledge of their peers to solve problems. And when an issue that the AI, either caused by the AI or that the AI can't handle, will be at a significant disadvantage because they won't know how to handle that. It also poses cybersecurity risks, especially with spacecraft. It's highly expensive, highly technologically advanced, and it'll be a high target for our adversaries. So the cybersecurity part needs to be completely monitored, controlled, and a large amount of caution is going to be needed in order to keep adversaries like China and Russia from getting their hands on our data, our equipment, possibly hacking it and using it against us. And then, like I said before, there's just a general distrust in AI overall among the general public. So how do we find a middle ground? We need to first establish the relationship between innovation versus regulation. How much do we want to grant the AI permission to do versus keeping it from doing too much. And especially with space, it's an extremely uncertain and unknown field. We are constantly discovering new things in the solar system, in the galaxy, that we have never seen before. And how do we implement the AI to process that stimuli and react to it in a way that helps us? Also, the question of how deeply do we need to advance, or how deeply should we invest in the issue? What do we stand to gain with each increase in spending? Kind of navigating how much do we need to spend to see the amount of improvement that we need, and is it worth it? And then to what extent should the human aspect be removed? So kind of summing that up in a little bit of a conflict statement here at the bottom. Like, although AI is recognized as a clear candidate for the future, with its uncertain nature and lack of current regulations, where do we draw that line between holding it back and letting it achieve its full potential? Some alternative considerations. You have that diminished sense of personal achievement. Um, Personally, if I saw something that said we landed a rover or a spacecraft on Mars versus we landed a person on Mars, I would feel a much sense of personal achievement for humanity if it was a person rather than a robot. The lack of somewhat of a lack of public interest in space advancement. Most people are more focused on what's going on with our planet than furthering our expeditions into the solar system. And then there's a lack of legal precedence there, especially with spacecraft. There's really no legislature that regulates how it can be used in what context and such like that. And then my personal perspective, I believe it absolutely must be utilized if we ever want to achieve our max potential. Um, I think most of the stigma against AI is due to pop culture. Like you saw, I had the Terminator picture on there, um, and not based on substantiated evidence of actually what the risks pose. Because this is a situation that we've never been in before. Um, I don't think person or full automation is the answer. But if we can remove the living thing from the spacecraft, we can have the ability to go much further into much more extreme environments, such as closer to the sun, going to Venus. Mainly the places that I think of as high temperature environments that we have not yet figured out how to keep a living organism from burning alive. So some of the key takeaways that I've gathered in my research is that we need to clearly establish a balance between how fully autonomous do we develop these systems and how much do we need to maintain regulation and oversight. Um, the improvement needs to be a main focus, especially for the space industry, but with cybersecurity concerns and determining regulations, those must also be a clear main focus so that the extent to which we use it and the capabilities to which we eventually develop it to be don't get out of hand and we can avoid large unforeseen problems that we cannot yet anticipate. Some of the changes that I think we can make now to the operation of how we use AI currently is to prioritize establishing that legal precedence so we have a clear construct of what we can do and what we can't do. Ensuring the cybersecurity, I think that is the single most biggest issue with going forward with using this type of software in such a complex environment that we do not want others to get access to, be able to copy our software, take it over, use it against us, such like that. And then creating advanced warning and fail-safe systems so that under no circumstances do we lose control, whether it is hacked, whether it decides to do something that we don't want it to. The detachment, especially when we're launching something up into the atmosphere, once it leaves the atmosphere and goes into space, there's really not much that we can do in terms of interacting with it. aside from just like putting in that fail safe measure to shut it off. There's not much like we can't just shoot it down with a missile, um, walk up to it and change something. So establishing that fail-safe system is crucial to making sure that nothing extreme happens to come back and haunt us, I guess, in a sense. So these are a list of my sources that I use, pictures included, and then I'll open up the floor to you guys for some questions if you have any.
Do you think that it would be worth going to one of these like very hot planets that you talked about with AI or with people? Like, is that really something that like we need as a society?
I feel like I don't know that necessarily we need it because we don't really have a good sense of what we stand to gain. Um, there's always like if we could go to these places like Venus, we can get a deeper understanding of what happened to it. How did its atmosphere get to that point? It's possible, who knows if that could have an influence on the way that we tackle global warming on Earth. But yeah, like without necessarily having a deep understanding of the makeup of the planet, it's hard to determine whether or not it's worth it.
I agree. Mhm.
Anybody else?
Hey, I enjoyed the presentation, Nathan. Something I guess I was just thinking about when you were going over the positive and the negatives um, of applying this kind of technology. And I know we're talking about space here, but you made the comment that we may not be able to achieve our max potential as humans without the use of AI. So, how does that impact how we should encourage our education systems to change moving forward? And I guess to kind of clarify, you, we learn English and basic math and stuff right now from a very early age. Some folks are encouraged, depending on where they live, to learn a different language, or, you know, particular skill sets are emphasized or made available to them. Once we find out how to use AI and kind of like how it works and the guts of it and the programming, how early does that need to start if it's that essential for us to continue uh, trying to achieve our max potential?
I think like because I believe it like already has started. Like we are, it's in its very beginning stages thus far, but with the market expanding like it's projected to, and the resources that we are devoting to it, um, computers will always be smarter than we can be. We can always program them to process information on a scale much quicker than we are able. Um, so I think if we're trying to move towards achieving that max potential, AI is one of the primary things that we need to focus on and use more as a tool and not something that we grow dependent on and kind of develop into something that replaces us, if that answers your question.
It does, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions?